Hello and welcome to my channel, I Win to Lose Gaming. Over the years, we have gotten many Electro DPS characters in Genshin Impact. Has power creep been a major issue, or have the older characters kept up with the modern Natlan meta? In today's DPS Showdown, we'll take a look at how Varesa, Clorinde, and Cyno fare against each other at various levels of investment, along with a potential secret guest Electro character. If you're like me, then you're tired of bad jokes like Cyno's multipliers in 2025 and how boring your browsing experience is. Well, we can fix that with today's sponsor, Opera GX. Opera GX keeps on getting better with new and improved mods constantly being added to the store. We already have a free Varesa theme, faster than Varesa can run to eat a burger. My personal favorite wallpaper is this Ganyu one, because it's really cool. Opera GX has custom fonts, custom icons, custom music, and if you miss Paimon, which I'm sure you do, custom Paimon noises and sound effects. One of my favorite features is the custom shaders. Tired of your browser being legible? Well, introducing the Cyber Psychosis shader, which makes Arlecchino look less glitchy than your browser. Anyway, it's not all just fun and games in Opera GX, there's tons of practical features as well, such as this video pop-out feature, where you can watch your favorite videos while customizing your Opera GX browser for fun and games. Needless to say, switching over from your boring old browser is easier than ever. By just clicking the browser setting icon and in the synchronization setting, import bookmarks and settings. Even easier than beating up baby dinosaurs. So what are you waiting for? Smash that link down below harder than Cyno smashing a punchline. Huge thanks to Opera GX for making web browsing interesting again. The results of this video were frankly quite shocking to me. Unfortunately, we still can't toggle constellations after all these years, so we're stuck with what we have, which is a Constellation 0 Varesa and Clorinde, and a Constellation 6 Cyno, with our not-so-secret guest character also at Constellation 6. Fortunately, one of the best speedrunners in all of Genshin Impact, DHCWSP, helped me out with the Constellation 6 Clorinde and Constellation 6 Varesa runs. Be sure to check out DHCWSP, a legendary mobile speedrunner for a constant influx of insane Genshin Impact speedruns, and leave a GOAT emoji down in the comments below to let him know he's the GOAT. And yes, we've got Constellation 6 Refinement 5 Cyno throwing hands with his fellow Constellation 0 peers of Varesa and Clorinde, and we'll see if his damage is as bad of a joke as his jokes are. Clorinde throughout this video does have an advantage for most parts of this video though, because of this 20% attack boost from the Fantastical Blessings, which even with my intentional over-critting to lower her damage, still puts her at 92% damage potential. As such, and due to my lower artifact quality for Varesa, for certain parts of the video I do adjust builds or use food or pyro resonance on Varesa to bring her damage potential to around 85 to 88%. As for Cyno, well, he's at Constellation 6 Refinement 5 and his artifacts are great, and just like how the Akasha network doesn't have a leaderboard for him, neither do I have damage maximized math to calculate his damage potential. Still, his build is about as good as it gets, and he's at Constellation 6 Refinement 5, so there is very little room to improve. As for our secret guest character, her build is also great as well. And here are DHCWSP's builds for his C6R5 Clorinde and Varesa, which if you haven't subscribed yet, go check him out and subscribe. As always, we've reached everyone's favorite part of the video, the disclaimers. All the times in this video can be improved. We do each of these runs a finite number of times to the best of our abilities and problem solving. There will always be ways to save time, but we had to stop grinding at some point. I advise for you to not come to any premature conclusions if you do not sit through these disclaimers and if you do not reach the end of the video. In fact, even after these disclaimers and the entire video, this video is not an accurate representation of these characters' power levels at all levels of investment and play. This is simply an anecdotal comparison between these characters at our levels of investment, problem solving, and skill. Because their characters are all at Constellation 6 Refinement 5, this is not an accurate reflection of the power levels at lower constellations. Just because character A is better than character B in a specific scenario does not mean the character A is better than character B. Please take everything with a giant grain of salt. Without further ado, let's spark some debate with today's DPS Showdown. Okay, I had many internal debates about whether to include 3 stacks on Clorinde's passive throughout the video, and decided yes, we should include it for most situations. Although there are a couple situations where we don't include it to demonstrate when it matters. Anyway, with 3 stacks on Clorinde's passive, she's able to quickly chop up our Cryo-Reg's fine friend in 6.5 seconds, a reasonable performance. As for Varesa, this is a situation where I did adjust her build to a Cryptfish build, allowing her to squish our Regisfine friend in just 4.4 seconds. Ah yes, Constellation C6R5 Cyno. Admittingly, Cyno isn't known for his raw electro damage, and instead, he's known for his raw sense of humor. Sadly, even with $2,000 of power-ups, he's unable to compare in this very short fight against our Regisfine friend. This is also largely because of his ramp-up time and his burst animation, which all extends the time it takes for him to take out a sentient salad. Let's move on over to their solo damage output versus a much more robot HP pool, the Robot Chicken. Okay, so I gotta admit, I do feel like I'm being a bit too generous to Clorinde here, allowing Nilou's Hydra application to constantly provide Electro Charge for 3 stacks on her passive, and her teammates battering her as well. Although I know that this run is a bit less efficient with using her burst first, I actually tried many times with her E first, and somehow this burst first was the only run where I managed to 2-cycle the Robot Chicken, but runs are just weird in that way. Anyway, as we can see, her time is very competitive to her peers, with admittingly a bit more help than the others to actually make her kit function properly. As for Varesa, well, she is far more independent than Clorinde, only needing a bit of energy to continue her butt-slamming destruction. And even with lower damage potential and less health to make her kit work, Varesa still cleanly beat the others in solo electro damage output versus our 1 million hit point Robot Chicken friend. Up next, we have Constellation C0R1 Cyno, who, well, this is yet another solo performance, and he actually was able to single cycle the Robot Chicken here. While it did take many attempts to just barely cook our Robot Chicken friend in a single rotation, he managed to pull this off, and frankly, I am very proud of him. Perhaps things will start to look up for him once we deal with a full team scenario. Which is the perfect segue to our first full team showcase, and for this section, the restriction is that the teammates must all be 4-star characters with 4-star weapons versus Abyss 12-2-1. Abyss 12-2-1 is an interesting multi-wave chamber with roughly 4.5 million hit points to chomp through, so it's a pretty beefy and mechanically interesting chamber. Clorinde, fortunately, is able to comfortably single cycle the first phase of the perpetual mechanical array, and with a slight breather in between PMA phases, Xiangling's long 20-second cooldown isn't a huge issue. Unsurprisingly, if Clorinde is able to blast through the first phase in a single rotation, the robot add-on plus the core aren't an issue for her, thus leaving her with a very respectable clear time of 55.2 seconds, which is honestly pretty impressive for blasting through roughly 4.5 million hit points or so. Meanwhile, Constellation Zero Varesa actually really impressed me here. With her large damage numbers able to chunk down our PMA friend, she was able to put the PMA into panic mode in just one attack cycle instead of the 2 attack cycles of her peers. This is what allowed her to complete this run significantly faster at just 46 seconds in comparison to the others. And one important thing to note about her and Clorinde's runs, using 4-star only characters definitely favors overloaded friendly DPS characters, because overloaded is one of the best 4-star only setups, especially if you have constellations on those 4 stars, which I do have constellations for. Anyway, up next we have Constellation 6 Refinement 5 Cyno. I actually did both Aggravate and Overloaded for him, and the results ended up being very similar. So I decided to include this Aggravate run for a bit more variety. I chose Fischl because she's able to effortlessly battery Cyno here, and Eon-san is great for providing a good amount of damage amplification for Cyno. Sadly, Quick Bloom was not nearly as good because Xingqiu simply applies too much Hydro for anyone not named Nahida, and Hyper Bloom deals significantly less damage in proportion to Cyno's personal damage output at Constellation 6 Refinement 5, so maintaining Aggravate was just simply more important. Anyway, unlike Varesa, it took Cyno 2 of the PMA's attack cycles, clear out the first phase, at least with these restrictions. I do feel like this run could be improved more than the others, perhaps there's something I'm missing for putting the PMA into panic mode with just one of its attack cycles, but I wasn't able to accomplish that in the runs that I did for Cyno. Still, this is a very clean 3-star clear time with plenty of time to spare in just 60-ish seconds. Let's move on over to our much richer peers, with DHCWSP's Constellation 6 Refinement 5 Clorinde and Varesa versus my Constellation 6 Refinement 5 Cyno. Constellation 6 Refinement 5 Clorinde was able to cleanly one-shot the Regisvine with just her burst, which gave her a very competitive clear time. As for Varesa, well, a single stomp from DHCWSP's Varesa was able to deal 232,920 damage. And with a nifty trick, Constellation 6 Varesa is able to clear this even faster by using her elemental burst before breaking the Regisvine's core, allowing for a single plunge attack to just casually deal 272,468 damage to one-shot our Regisvine friend. But Varesa isn't allowed as many shenanigans as the others, so we'll use the no shenanigans run for her time. As for Cyno, well, this is the same run from before, and his age is really starting to show. Compared to similarly invested peers, let's just say Cyno put his money towards collecting cards instead of collecting higher multipliers. Up next we have a whale showdown of just purely solo damage output. Well, without any teammates to provide reactions for Clorinde, now her damage falls off a cliff. Despite having that 20% attack from Fantastical Blessings, and without any support to build 3 stacks for her, she's not able to come close to Varesa's insane solo damage output.
Into the shadows.
As for Varesa, well, she literally has one of the highest pure solo damage outputs in the game, rivaling that of the almighty Pyro Archon. In this situation, it's not too surprising for her to clear this in just 9.2 seconds. As for Cyno, well, after trying this for literally an hour, which let me tell you got about as old as Cyno's jokes, I was finally able to 2-cycle our green pudgy friend. And in fact, I cheated by allowing him to be batteried so we didn't have to run a 200% energy recharge Cyno. So now this run is kind of moot in comparison to the previous solo runs because we had to battery him, but let's give the man a break, and more importantly, give me a break. So his clear time gets an asterisk of shame, indicating that he did get some special help, so let's move on to a teammate assisted run for each of them. Here DHCWSP's Clorinde is allowed to take advantage of pre-casted Nilo EEE for constant Electro charge, which provides her 3 stacks on her passive and massively improves her damage. This actually allowed her to single cycle our green pudgy friend in comparison to 2-cycling it from before, which obviously drastically improves her clear time to be quite similar to Varesa's solo damage output with a clear time of 9.9 seconds. Varesa, on the other hand, was allowed Pyro Resonance, and well, her clear time didn't improve here because it still took the exact same number of butt plunges to take out our green pudgy friend. Adding any other type of assistance for Varesa, in my opinion, feels like a bridge too far, and it also just goes to show that Varesa is a very independent cow, not needing to rely on the rest of the herd to perform spectacularly. And finally, it's Cyno's time to shine with how he was meant to be played with Aggravate. I did allow a 50,000 plus HP Constellation 2 Baizu to support him from off field, and he was able to just barely, and I mean barely, single cycle our 1.6 million HP green pudgy friend. Yes, sadly he has fallen far behind than his Electro DPS peers, and even with free Dendro application and the damage amplification from Baizu, he is still very far behind. Up next we have one of the chonkiest enemies, at least that's permanent content, our 9.2 million hit point Wyob friend. No holds barred, full teams, food only, final destination. DHCWSP's Clorinde was able to single cycle the Wyob, which is frankly very impressive. Granted, Clorinde is still a relatively newish character, and she was blessed with modern constellations. Thankfully, with the power of DHCWSP's min-maxing and execution as well as food, Clorinde was able to single cycle our thick Wyob friend in a very competitive 17.4 second clear time. As for Varesa, well, she is missing the 20% attack buff from Fantastical Blessing that Clorinde has, but she still had a stellar performance here. And while Clorinde was barely able to single cycle it, Varesa single cycled it with the ability to keep on going. Even with this additional flexibility, she cleared this the fastest in 14.3 seconds. And finally, it is Cyno's moment of glory. His team absolutely dominated the field in just 8.5 seconds. But there's just a little problem. The catch is Cyno won by doing absolutely nothing. The reality is everyone's best C6R5 team right now is literally putting them with Mavuika, Citlali, and Shilinin, and having Varesa and Clorinde in Cyno's spot would have led to the exact same result. As such, the modern meta is a bit of a mess because of this. Anyway, enough bad jokes on the caliber of Cyno's jokes, let's actually see what Cyno himself can do. Yes, you are seeing this right. This goofy pardon my French, donkey team is somehow one of Cyno's best teams. Sitlali, even against this cryo-resistant enemy, did a smidge better than his classic Hyperbloom team with Nahida. Now kids don't try this at home as this mainly just applies to whale levels of investment, but the meta for older characters is just in complete shambles lately. Sitlali is such a ridiculous character that her EM and bonus damage buffs boost Cyno's damage by about as much as his classic Quick Bloom team at whale levels of investment. Anyway, don't worry, we'll be using this Sitlali clear time instead of his actual best team with Mavuika of him not doing anything. But wait, that's not all. We have a new challenger, my Constellation 6 Refinement 5 Raiden Shogun. Fortunately, she's able to one-shot the Cryo Regisfine with a crit fish build, allowing her to tie a no shenanigans Varesa. As for her pure solo damage output, she does suffer because she's not able to build max resolve for the second rotation. Frankly, it's a bit of a gray area to start at max resolve, but alas, this is my video so my rules, and it took her 2 bursts plus the initial slash of the 3rd burst to finish off our 1.6 million hit point Green Pudge friend. Now once we allow her to build max resolve, she did end up being the slowest since she needed 2 full rotations. Whereas with Aggravate plus Constellation 2 Baiju's buffs, which is a bit more than what Raiden got in my opinion, Cyno was able to squeak out a single cycle. This last run versus our thick Wild friend also lands in another gray area since Yelan and Furina definitely did a ton of the team's damage. But Raiden does contribute and she does deal a meaningful, although not even a plurality, of the team's damage. Personally, I felt it would have been unfair to stick Raiden with her oldest team archetypes like Sara or something, as we're missing out on how broken characters like Shilinen and Furina are. If you felt like this was a bit unfair and biased towards Raiden, do let me know down in the comments below. Now we've also got some bonus runs and results with the temporary Unlimited Fighting Championship event, where you have the option to blitz through 9,999 health bars. Now this event has a bunch of factors that leads to imbalances between team performances, with some absolutely massive imbalance buffs depending on what is in your team. So for these results, please take them with an even bigger grain of salt than usual. Anyway, with my previous limitation of using only 4-star teams for the Constellation 0 Refinement 1 teams, my Constellation 0 Refinement 1 Clorinde scored 1,157, and my Constellation 0 Refinement 1 Varesa scored 1,530 with some crit rate food. And my Constellation 6 Refinement 5 Cyno actually managed to score 1,524. I'm actually quite impressed that Constellation 6 Refinement 5 Cyno managed to keep up with Varesa in this situation where extremely long rotations were at play. I also went with a dual element Petch team for all of these characters so as not to strongly favor any specific team due to the goofy buff that this thing gives you. Also, the restriction of having an archer applies to all their teams as well, so yeah, you can see why these runs need to be taken with a giant grain of salt. We also did a run against our Green Pudgy event friend with DHCWSP's Clorinde scoring 4,576, and yes, he did use Nahida plus Quick Bloom for Clorinde, and while the Dendro portion of this team accounts for a pretty small amount of the team's damage, this is still a minor handicap, although the 20% attack buff does help Clorinde out, so yeah, again, disclaimers. DHCWSP's Varesa scored 5,449 and my Cyno scored 2,632, despite this chamber having an 80% boost to his elemental skill damage. Finally, Raiden's previous double Hydro team scored 3,614, showing that if you rely a bit more on other characters, your score will improve. So yeah, here are the final results of this DPS Showdown. At Constellation 0, there's no question about it. Varesa just does a ton of raw Electro damage, and it's no surprise, to me at least, that she felt stronger than Clorinde. Still, Clorinde isn't so far behind and is still a solid character to this day. However, what was actually surprising to me was that Constellation 6 Refinement 5 Cyno fell so far behind than Constellation 0 Varesa. If only there was a stand-up comedy leaderboard on the Akasha network, then maybe Cyno could finally get the W on something. At whale levels, first give it up for DHCWSP for his help, and don't forget to subscribe to him, the GOAT of all mobile speedrunners. Overall though, I'd say the gap actually closes between Clorinde and Varesa if Clorinde is allowed to utilize her kit to the fullest and if she's able to single cycle whatever content she's facing. Also don't forget about the fantastical blessing that it did give Clorinde 20% attack. Anyway, Varesa, however, is far more flexible, and given the right scenarios, she can pull significantly ahead. After Cyno and Raiden, no surprise, their age is really starting to show. Cyno's jokes have gotten staler than Raiden's puppet joints, and modern power creep is truly becoming more evident. And again, these days it's even harder than before to make things extremely fair for all characters involved with how much variation we have between everyone. With, for example, Raiden using double Hydro being in a gray area, Clorinde gaining Electro Charge for some showcases, one of Cyno's best whale teams to not even include Aggravate, Mavwika, Sitlali, and Shilinin being better with just 3 characters than anything these characters can put together with 4, so on and so forth. So yeah. Now, while I might have been surprised at Constellation 6 Refinement 5 Cyno feeling worse in most situations than Constellation 0 Refinement 1 Varesa, I wasn't surprised at all with how far behind he is compared to Constellation 6 Refinement 5 Clorinde and Constellation 6 Refinement 5 Varesa. So yeah, power creep has been quite prevalent for Electro DPS characters over the years, with it really ramping up in Fontaine in my opinion. Let me know what you think about the results of this DPS Showdown and whether you were surprised by anything in this video. And don't forget to check out today's sponsor, Opera GX, as they make these types of videos possible. Trust me, these DPS Showdowns take a lot of effort, and I really do appreciate them sponsoring these videos. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Win to Lose, signing out.